The Admiral's laugh cut through the silence on deck. He was known for this, humiliating new operators, especially women who dared enter his world. 22 Navy SEALs stood at attention as he stopped in front of her, the only female in formation. "Tell me, Lieutenant Commander," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "what's your kill count?" His smirk said everything. He expected 0. Her eyes remained forward, voice steady as steel. 467, sir." The deck froze. His face drained of color as whispers rippled through the ranks. He recognized that number and suddenly remembered exactly who she was. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing for more untold military stories that history tried to bury. The steel deck of the USS Vigilance gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, polished to a mirror finish that reflected the tense faces of the 22 Naval Special Warfare operators standing at attention. 21 men and 1 woman. The woman stood at the end of the line, her weathered face expressionless, her posture perfect. Lieutenant Commander Alowan Reeve had learned long ago that stillness was often the best defense. The air in the operations deck tasted of industrial cleaning agents and the salt that somehow penetrated even this sealed environment. The ventilation system hummed quietly overhead, occasionally punctuated by the distant sound of aircraft launching from the flight deck above. Every operator breathed carefully, measuring each inhalation as they waited. The clock on the bulkhead read 0600 hours when the doors swung open with practiced precision. Admiral Thaddeus Blackwood strode through, his chest heavy with decorations that caught the light with each step. 2 aides flanked him, carrying tablets and speaking in hushed tones that stopped abruptly as they entered the room. The formation stiffened further, if that was even possible. Blackwood's reputation preceded him throughout naval special warfare, decorated combat veteran turned bureaucratic powerhouse, known equally for his tactical brilliance and his disdain toward the integration of women into special operations. "At ease," he announced, though no one truly relaxed. His voice carried the practiced authority of a man accustomed to immediate obedience. "Annual readiness inspection. Let's make this quick." He moved through the ranks methodically, occasionally pausing to ask perfunctory questions about equipment readiness or recent deployments. The men responded with practiced efficiency. "Yes, sir." "No, sir." 3 weeks ago, sir." Blackwood barely seemed to register their answers, his attention already moving to the next operator before the previous one finished speaking. Chief Warwick stood 4 positions away from Elowen, his face impassive but his eyes alert. Unlike many of the others, he didn't shift nervously as the Admiral approached. He had been through many inspections to waste energy on anxiety. As Blackwood approached Elowen, the room's atmosphere subtly shifted. Eyes flicked sideways, shoulders tensed. The Admiral slowed his pace, examining her with exaggerated scrutiny that made his intention clear to everyone present. "Lieutenant Commander," he paused, glancing down at the tablet an aide hastily handed him. "Reeve, is it?" "Yes, sir." Her voice was quiet but firm, carrying just far enough to reach him without echoing through the space. He studied her file on the screen, his expression growing increasingly skeptical. "Transferred in from 5th Group Support. Says here you've been with us 8 months. He looked up, eyes narrowing. "Seems your file is rather thin." "Yes, sir." The same tone, neither defensive nor apologetic. "Tell me, Lieutenant Commander, what exactly did you do before joining this unit?" "Forward support operations, sir." A few of the men exchanged glances. One of the senior operators, Chief Warwick, shifted his weight almost imperceptibly. His eyes fixed straight ahead, but his attention clearly focused on the interaction. "Support," Blackwood repeated, drawing out the word as though it were somehow suspect. "And they saw fit to fast-track you directly into operational status." He didn't phrase it as a question, but the implication hung in the air. "I go where ordered, sir." Blackwood's mouth twitched with amusement. A few of the junior operators smirked, reading the Admiral's cues and responding accordingly. "And you've seen combat, I presume? Or was your support confined to safe zones?" Elowen's eyes remained fixed forward, focused on a point somewhere beyond the Admiral's shoulder. "I've seen action, sir." "Is that so?" Blackwood's smile widened, his voice rising to ensure everyone heard. "Then tell me, Lieutenant Commander, what's your count?" The question hung in the air. Everyone knew what he was asking: confirmed eliminations, the metric many still use to measure an operator's effectiveness, despite official discouragement of such tallies. It was a question rarely asked in formal settings, and never during inspections. "Respectfully, sir, I don't keep count." Blackwood laughed, looking around to share his amusement with the room. Most joined in, though a few, including Chief Warwick, remained stone-faced. "Come now, Lieutenant Commander." Blackwood tapped the tablet with his index finger. "Numbers don't lie. It's a simple question for someone who's seen action. 1, 2, did you fire your weapon at all?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. In the back of the room, a communications officer entered quietly and whispered something to one of the Admiral's aides, who suddenly stiffened and tried to catch Blackwood's attention. The Admiral waved him off with a sharp gesture, focused on the moment he was creating. Ilawan's eyes shifted slightly, meeting the aide's panicked gaze for a fraction of a second before returning to their forward position. "Admiral," the aide attempted again, but Blackwood cut him off with a sharp gesture. "I'm waiting for an answer, Lieutenant Commander." Ilawan drew a slow breath. The room seemed to hold its collective breath with her. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear, carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent space. 467, sir." The room froze. The number seemed impossible, larger than what entire platoons accumulated across multiple deployments. The Admiral's smirk remained frozen on his face, but something changed in his eyes: recognition, then disbelief, then the first flicker of fear. "What did you say?" His voice had lost its mocking edge. 467 confirmed, sir." Another 83 probable. The smirk disappeared entirely. The Admiral's aide leaned in, showing him something on a second tablet, a communication marked with highest-level classification codes that flashed red against the screen's blue background. Blackwood took the tablet, his hand noticeably unsteady. He looked at Elowen again, this time studying her face with different eyes, as though seeing her for the first time. "Your previous designation?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "JSOC Task Force Umbra, Operational Detachment Sigma, callsign Spectre." Throughout the room, reactions rippled through the formation. A senior operator whispered "shit" under his breath. Another closed his eyes briefly, as though processing information that didn't align with his understanding of the world. Chief Warwick's posture became impossibly straighter. Blackwood's complexion had gone ashen. "Dismissed," he said abruptly, turning away. Everyone dismissed, now. As the formation broke, no one spoke. Operators filed out silently, many casting glances at Elowen, who remained perfectly still. Only after the room had nearly emptied did she move toward the exit. "Reeve." Blackwood's voice stopped her. The Admiral stood alone now, his aides having withdrawn to the corridor. "My office, 15 minutes." The hallways of the USS Vigilance curved gently, following the contours of the massive carrier's hull. Elowen walked them with quiet efficiency, her footsteps barely audible against the metal flooring. Around her, other personnel moved with purpose, but she noted the way they created space around her, conversations faltering as she passed. News traveled fast on a ship, even one this size. She paused outside the Admiral's office, checking her watch. 14 minutes since dismissal. She waited the additional 60 seconds before knocking. Not early, not late. Precision had kept her alive this long. "Enter." Blackwood's voice had regained some of its authority, though it lacked the earlier smugness. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. The office was surprisingly austere for a flag officer. Functional furniture, minimal decorations beyond the obligatory unit insignias, and a single photograph of Blackwood receiving his first command. The lights were dimmed, slightly throwing the Admiral's face into partial shadow as he sat behind his desk. "Sit." He gestured to the chair across from him. Between them lay a sealed file marked with black classification bars, the kind reserved for the highest level of operational security. 12 years, Blackwood said quietly after she had seated herself. 12 years I've carried the Khyber Pass operation as mine. Yes, sir. Her voice betrayed nothing. 43 men credited to my command decisions that day. 42, sir. The correction hung between them, its significance clear to both. Blackwood opened the file, revealing after-action reports and photographs. A mountain pass covered in snow, bodies scattered across rocky terrain, a younger Blackwood receiving a silver star. You were never supposed to resurface, he said, turning a page to reveal an operational chart with multiple names redacted. Task Force Umbra was disbanded, all operators reassigned he stopped. Or listed as casualties of unrelated operations, Elowen finished. Operational security. Then why are you here, Spectre? Why now? New administration, new priorities. She nodded toward the window, where through the glass they could see an aide approaching with more documents. The old ghosts are being reassigned. Blackwood's intercom buzzed. Admiral, SecNav on Secure Line 1, Priority Alpha. He didn't move to answer it, his eyes still fixed on Elowen. They know you're here. They sent me here, Elowen corrected. The question is whether they sent me because of you or despite you. The intercom buzzed again, more insistent this time. Blackwood ignored it, leaning forward across the desk. The count. Is it accurate? To the best of my knowledge, I didn't keep the tally. JSOC Intelligence Directorate did. For what purpose? You know why, sir. Asset valuation, cost-benefit analysis. Blackwood's jaw tightened. You were given impossible missions. No, sir, just missions no one else could acknowledge. She nodded toward the file. Like Khyber Pass. The Admiral closed the file with deliberate care. What happens next, Spectre? That depends on you, sir. For the first time, she leaned forward slightly. What's in that file is only part of the story. We both know that. The intercom buzzed a third time, and now a light flashed on Blackwood's desk phone, indicating an override. I have to take this, he said, his eyes still locked with Elowen's. This discussion isn't over. No, sir, it's just beginning. She stood and walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. For what it's worth, Admiral, I never wanted the count. I just did what was necessary so others wouldn't have to. As she closed the door behind her, she heard Blackwood pick up the secure line. Yes, Mr. Secretary, I understand the sensitivity. Yes, she's here. No, sir, I don't believe that will be necessary. The ship's passageways seemed different now. Operators who had previously ignored her now tracked her movement with sidelong glances. Two junior lieutenants stopped their conversation entirely as she passed, resuming only when she had turned the corner. The dynamic had shifted, and Elowen noted each change with the precision of someone accustomed to reading environments for threats. By midday, the entire Special Operations contingent aboard the Vigilance had heard about the morning's inspection. The number, 467, traveled through the ship like a current, electrifying conversations and altering perceptions. No one spoke it aloud in her presence, but Elowen felt it nonetheless, a gravitational force that had suddenly appeared in their shared universe. The officer's mess was half empty when she entered at 1300 hours. She selected her food with care, protein, complex carbohydrates, minimal processing, and sat alone at a table near the bulkhead, where she could observe the entire space. Conversations dimmed as she entered, then resumed at lower volumes. Several operators who had been seated near her chosen position found reasons to relocate. Chief Warwick entered a few minutes later, his tray laden with the day's offering of Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes. He surveyed the room, noting the empty space around Elowen, then walked directly to her table and set his tray down across from her. Mind if I join you, Lieutenant Commander? She gestured to the empty seat with her fork. For several minutes they ate in silence, Warwick occasionally glancing up to observe the reactions of others in the mess. Spectre, he finally said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I thought it was a ghost story, something they told us in training to make us push harder. Elowen continued eating, not looking up from her tray. They said you killed a Taliban commander with a spoon once. A slight pause in her chewing was the only indication she had heard him. It was a fork, she said finally. And he wasn't Taliban. Warwick studied her, then nodded slowly, accepting the correction and its implications. The men are talking, the number. Is it real? Numbers don't lie, isn't that what the Admiral said? You understand this changes things. Warwick glanced around the empty mess. There are operators aboard who've done 10 deployments and haven't broken triple digits. You're carrying more than most platoons. I didn't keep count. They did. She pushed her tray away, the food half-eaten. Every operation, every target, all filed away by people who never had to look them in the eyes. As she stood to leave, Warwick spoke again. Blackwood's been in his office all day. Secure calls, classified visitors. Something's happening. Something's always happening, Chief. That's why we exist. The afternoon passed in routine tasks, equipment checks, operational readiness drills, physical training. Alawan moved through each with the same quiet efficiency she always displayed, but she noted subtle differences in how others responded to her. Senior officers who had previously micromanaged her work now simply acknowledged and moved on. Junior operators who had once ignored her guidance now complied without question. The ship's cycle transitioned to night operations, lights dimming to preserve night vision on the flight deck and create artificial day and night cycles for the crew. Alawan returned to her quarters at 2200 hours, securing the door behind her. The space was minimal: a bunk, a small desk, storage for personal effects and equipment. Unlike many operators who decorated their spaces with photographs, mementos, or good luck charms, Alawan's quarters remained utilitarian. The only personal touch was a small, smooth stone on the desk, dark gray with a single white line running through it. She removed her uniform and changed into PT gear, then began a series of precise stretches, working methodically from her neck down to her ankles. Each movement addressed specific muscle groups that carried the cumulative tension of years of operational stress. The routine was meditative, allowing her mind to process the day's events while maintaining her physical readiness. The revelation of her identity had accelerated a timeline she'd been tracking since her assignment to the Vigilance. Blackwood's reaction confirmed certain suspicions, but raised new questions. The SecNav's direct involvement suggested higher stakes than even she had anticipated. She completed her stretching routine and moved to the small sink, washing her face with cold water. In the mirror, she studied her own reflection dispassionately, the faint scar along her jawline from Kabul, the slight asymmetry to her left eye from the explosion in Karachi, the premature strands of silver in her dark hair. A record of survival etched into flesh. Sleep came easily, as it always did. Another skill honed through necessity. She had trained herself to maximize rest in minimal windows, to wake instantly at the slightest anomaly. 5 hours of deep sleep was sufficient to maintain optimal function. At 200 hours, her eyes opened to darkness. Something had changed in the ambient sound of the carrier, not an alarm or announcement, but a subtle shift in the ship's rhythm that registered in her subconscious. A moment later, her secure tablet activated itself on the desk, the screen glowing blue in the darkness. She was on her feet and across the small space before the device had fully powered on. A message appeared on the screen. Exfil protocol, initiated primary asset. Compromise detection, terminate. Current assignment, proceed to extraction point. Charlie authentication, Sigma 9 Blacklake. She read it once, committing it to memory, then erased the message and shut down the tablet. The authentication code was correct, but the timing was unexpected. Something had accelerated events beyond the planned timeline. She knelt beside her bunk and retrieved a small kit from a concealed compartment in the frame. Inside was a non-standard sidearm with suppressor attachment, documentation with an alternate identity, and communication equipment not issued by the Navy. Tools of a ghost who operated in the spaces between official missions. A soft knock at her door froze her movements. She secured the kit and approached silently, weapon ready but concealed against her leg. "It's Warwick," came a whispered voice from the corridor. "You need to move, now." She opened the door a crack, revealing the chief's face illuminated only by the dim red emergency lighting of the passageway. His expression was grim, tension evident in the set of his jaw. "3 counterintelligence officers boarded during night ops," he said without preamble. "They're checking IDs deck by deck, starting from the bridge. Looking for me? They're not saying, but they're carrying your file photo." Alawan nodded once, processing this information against what she already knew. "You should return to your quarters, Chief. This isn't your operation. Blackwood sent them. Whatever you did in Khyber Pass, whatever he took credit for, he's making sure it stays buried." For the first time, something like emotion crossed Alawan's face. A momentary hardening around the eyes, a subtle tightening of her jaw. "What I did in Khyber Pass was save his life and the lives of 16 others. What he did was leave me behind to complete the mission alone." Warwick's eyes widened slightly. The report said a single operator held the pass for 6 hours against overwhelming forces while the wounded were evacuated. 6 hours, 17 minutes, 42 confirmed eliminations. Her voice remained flat, reciting facts rather than seeking recognition. That's where the count began. A distant sound of boots on metal flooring echoed through the passageway. Warwick tensed, glancing over his shoulder. "Go," she said. "Whatever happens next isn't for witnesses." After he had disappeared around the corner, Elowen closed the door and moved with practiced efficiency. She gathered only essential items: the kit from beneath her bunk, a small medical package from her desk, the stone with the white line. Everything else was replaceable or, more importantly, traceable. She moved to what appeared to be a solid bulkhead and located a nearly invisible seam near the floor. With practiced movements, she removed a false panel, revealing a narrow passage into the ship's maintenance shafts, an escape route she had identified and prepared during her first week aboard the Vigilance. Standard procedure for an operator who had spent a career planning for contingencies. The distant sound of boots grew louder, accompanied by the low murmur of voices. They were methodical, thorough, checking each cabin, verifying identities. Professional? Elowen slipped into the maintenance shaft, replacing the panel behind her. In the darkness, she moved with the confidence of someone who had memorized the path, navigating by touch and spatial awareness. The carrier's infrastructure was a maze of access tunnels, ventilation shafts, and maintenance corridors, invisible to most crew members but essential to those who understood how to move unseen. As she navigated deeper into the ship's infrastructure, Elowen processed what Warwick had told her. Counterintelligence officers meant the operation had escalated beyond internal Navy channels. Blackwood was calling in resources from outside his direct chain of command, taking a significant risk by doing so. The question was, why? What in the Khyber Pass operation was worth such exposure? She paused at a junction, orienting herself by the subtle vibrations in the metal surrounding her. The engine room would be 2 decks below, the communications center 1 deck up and forward. If Blackwood was coordinating a hunt for her, that's where the operation would be centered. A sound from behind her, metal against metal, barely audible but distinct from the ship's normal noises. Someone else was in the maintenance shafts, someone who moved with the careful precision of trained personnel. They had anticipated her escape route. Elowen changed direction, moving laterally rather than continuing forward. The Vigilance was a floating city of nearly 6,000 personnel, and somewhere among them were the answers to why a 12-year-old operation was suddenly worth risking careers and violating operational security protocols to keep buried. She needed information before extraction, and for that, she needed access to systems that only existed in one place on the carrier, the ship's communications center. Have you ever witnessed someone being underestimated, only to reveal extraordinary skill or talent when it mattered most? Share your story in the comments, and if this military drama resonates with you, subscribe for more stories of unsung heroes and the moments that define them. The ship's communication center hummed with electronic activity, screens casting a blue glow across the faces of duty personnel. 3 counterintelligence officers moved with practiced efficiency between terminals, their dark uniforms lacking insignia or identifying marks. The lead officer approached the communications duty officer, a young ensign who straightened visibly at their approach. "We need access to secure Channel 7, the lead officer said, displaying credentials that made the ensign swallow hard. "That's the Admiral's private channel, sir. I don't have authorization." "We do?" The officer slid a signed order across the console. The ensign studied it, his expression shifting from resistance to reluctant compliance as he recognized the authority behind the signature. "System coming online now, sir," he said, fingers moving across his keyboard. As the terminal activated, the overhead lights suddenly cut out, plunging the room into darkness except for the glow of monitors. Emergency lighting flickered on seconds later, casting everything in a deep crimson that transformed the space into a surreal landscape of shadows and silhouettes. "Security breach," one of the officers said, drawing his weapon. "Lock down the—" The words died as Elowen emerged from behind a server bank, moving with a speed and precision that seemed impossible in the limited light. The first officer registered only a blur of movement before finding himself face down on the deck, arm twisted precisely to immobilize without permanent damage. The second reached for his sidearm, but froze as fingers pressed against a nerve cluster in his neck. The third had time only to turn before a precisely calculated strike rendered him unconscious. 7 seconds from emergence to resolution, No wasted movement, no unnecessary force. The terrified ensign raised his hands. "Please, Relax," Elowen said, moving to the terminal. "I'm not here for you." Her fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced familiarity, navigating through security protocols with the efficiency of someone who had designed similar systems. Classified channels opened under her touch, revealing layers of information invisible to standard military personnel. "You have two choices," she said to the ensign without looking away from the screen. "You can stay and observe what happens next, understanding that doing so makes you a witness to classified information. Or you can walk out that door, report that you were temporarily relieved of duty by counterintelligence officers, and maintain plausible deniability." The young officer hesitated, his gaze moving between Elowen and the three incapacitated agents. "Who are you?" "Someone trying to correct a mistake." She glanced at his name tag. "Ensign Harris, some questions are safer left unasked, and some truths are dangerous to know." He stood, straightening his uniform with shaking hands. "I'll report the counterintelligence presence as ordered, ma'am." "Wise choice." As he left, Elowen continued her search through secured files, documents flashing across the screen, mission reports, personnel files, and finally video footage labeled Khyber Pass Operation, Command Review, Classified. The video showed a younger Blackwood, his face streaked with blood from a head wound, being loaded onto a helicopter with other injured personnel. In the background, gunfire and explosions rocked a narrow mountain pass, the camera shaking with each detonation. A single figure, face obscured by tactical gear, but unmistakably female by her build, provided covering fire with methodical precision, each shot finding its mark despite the chaos. Blackwood, despite his injuries, was conscious in the footage. As the helicopter prepared to lift off, he looked directly at the camera and spoke to someone off-screen, his words clear despite the surrounding noise. "No extraction for Spectre. Mission parameters remain. Target must be eliminated regardless of casualties." The video continued, showing the lone operator fighting as the helicopter disappeared into the gray mountain sky, systematically eliminating attackers while advancing deeper into the pass rather than retreating. The footage cut abruptly as the operator disappeared into a cloud of snow and debris kicked up by an explosion. Elowen watched her own past unfold on the screen, her expression unchanged by the evidence of her betrayal. The memories had long ago been compartmentalized, filed away as operational data rather than personal trauma. She copied the files to a secure drive, then initiated a ship-wide broadcast override, a protocol intended for emergency communications that would commandeer every screen on the vessel. Throughout the USS Vigilance, monitors flickered as the Khyber Pass footage began playing. In the crew mess, conversations stopped mid-sentence. On the flight deck, maintenance crews paused their work. In officers' quarters, men and women, awoken from sleep, stared at screens normally used for operational data, now showing classified combat footage. And on the bridge, Admiral Thaddeus Blackwood watched in growing horror as his past materialized on every screen, exposing a truth buried under 12 years of carefully constructed fiction. The Admiral's private quarters were located just aft of the bridge, allowing immediate access during emergencies. Blackwood burst through the connecting door, still securing his uniform, face flushed with a combination of sleep deprivation and mounting panic. "What the hell is happening?" he demanded of the bridge crew. "Who authorized this broadcast?" The bridge officer stood frozen, transfixed by the monitors where the footage continued playing, now showing aftermath photography. Bodies in the snow, blood-stained intelligence documents, and finally, a figure emerging from the past 12 hours after the extraction, carrying both the targeted intelligence package and the dog tags of 3 operators left behind in the initial retreat. "Shut it down!" Blackwood shouted, his composure crumbling visibly. "This is classified material." "We can't, sir," a communications officer responded, fingers moving frantically across his console. "The systems locked us out." He paused, looking up with growing alarm. "And it's not just playing on the ship. It's being transmitted to CENTCOM, Pentagon, and JSOC headquarters." The bridge doors opened again. Elowen entered, flanked by Chief Warwick and the ship's executive officer, Commander Hayes. The room fell silent, every eye turning toward the trio. Warwick's presence suggested a division of loyalties among the crew. The XO's involvement indicated something far more significant than a personal vendetta. "What have you done?" Blackwood whispered, his face drained of color as the implications registered fully. "Numbers don't lie, Admiral," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent bridge. 42 in the pass, 425 more across 12 years of operations you and others like you authorized, then buried, always alone, always deniable. "You were a weapon," Blackwood hissed, glancing nervously at the bridge crew, witnessing his unraveling. "Nothing more, a tool to be used and discarded when necessary." "No, sir." For the first time, real emotion filled her voice. Not anger, but a quiet certainty that carried more weight than rage ever could. "I was a soldier who never left anyone behind, not even the ones you abandoned." The XO stepped forward, his face grim. "Admiral Blackwood, I have orders from SecNav to relieve you of command, effective immediately." Two Marine guards entered, taking positions on either side of the Admiral. Their presence transformed the moment from confrontation to formal proceeding. "On what grounds?" Blackwood demanded, though the tremble in his voice suggested he already knew. Commander Hayes looked to Elowen, then back to Blackwood. "Falsification of after-action reports, misappropriation of classified resources, and the illegal targeting of a protected intelligence asset." He nodded toward Elowen. "Lieutenant Commander Reeve was reassigned to this vessel under direct orders from JSOC Command as part of Operation Clean Slate, the review of compromised historical operations." "You were being evaluated, Admiral," Elowen said quietly, "and you failed." Blackwood stared at her, comprehension dawning in his eyes. "You set me up. The transfer, the inspection. You set yourself up 12 years ago in that pass," she corrected him. "I just gave you the chance to finally do the right thing." She reached into her pocket and removed a worn, sand-encrusted dog tag, placing it on the console between them. The name stamped into the metal was visible to everyone present. Blackwood. "I kept it," she said, "to remind myself that sometimes the people we save don't deserve it." The Admiral stared at the tag. The one that had marked him as killed in action before Elowen's intervention changed his fate. His shoulders slumped as the final truth settled over him, visible to everyone present. The mythology he had constructed, the career built on stolen valor, collapsing in a single moment of undeniable truth. "Lieutenant Commander Reeve," he said formally, using her real rank and name for the first time, "I would like to officially revise my report on the Khyber Pass operation." The room held its breath. "Spectre didn't hold the pass alone," he continued, his voice breaking slightly. "Spectre carried me back to the extraction zone after I was wounded, attempting to secure the intelligence package. I ordered her to leave me and complete the mission. She refused that order, saved my life, returned me to the extraction helicopter, and then, against direct orders to withdraw, turned back to secure both the intelligence and the remains of our fallen." He removed his own admiral's insignia and placed it beside the dog tag. "I hereby resign my commission, effective immediately, and submit myself for disciplinary review." The Marine guards stepped forward, preparing to escort him from the bridge. "Wait," Elowen said. She picked up the insignia and dog tag, studying them briefly before holding them out to Blackwood. "Keep them. Remember what they cost." The Admiral's hands trembled as he accepted the items, their weight suddenly different in his grasp. "Why?" "Because you're not the only one who needs to answer for what happened. You're just the first." An uneasy silence settled over the bridge as Blackwood was escorted out, the implications of her words hanging in the air. The systematic betrayal of operators like Spectre wouldn't have been possible without authorization from the highest levels of command. Commander Hayes cleared his throat. "All personnel, return to your stations. Lieutenant Commander Reeve, SecNav is requesting secure communication with you immediately." "Understood." Elowen turned to Warwick, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation. "Chief, I need your assistance." He nodded once, professional mask firmly in place, despite the extraordinary events he had just witnessed. "Lead the way, ma'am." As they exited the bridge, the regular rhythm of the carrier began to reassert itself. Orders were given, acknowledged, executed. The vast machinery of naval operations continuing despite the momentary disruption. Only the occasional glances toward Elowen suggested anything unusual had occurred. The XO's office was smaller than the Admiral's, but similarly utilitarian. Hayes closed the door behind them, engaging the security lock before activating the secure communication system built into his desk. "SecNav, standing by on encrypted channel 1, he said, stepping back to allow Eloan access. The screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Secretary of the Navy, Amanda Chen. Her expression gave nothing away, though the late hour in Washington was evident in the darkness visible through the window behind her. "Lieutenant Commander Reeve," she said without preamble, "report status." "Initial objective achieved, ma'am. Admiral Blackwood has been relieved of command and has admitted to falsification of the Khyber Pass operation records." "And the secondary documentation?" "Secured. The Umbra files contain confirmation of at least 6 other operations where commanders took credit for actions performed by deniable assets." Chen nodded, satisfaction briefly visible in her eyes. "The President was briefed an hour ago. He's authorized full scope for clean slate. The days of operators being used as ghosts and then discarded are over." "With respect, Madam Secretary, I'll believe that when I see it. This isn't the first time promises have been made." "No, but it's the first time the evidence has been impossible to ignore." Chen leaned forward. "You've done your part, Commander. The rest of the task force is being activated as we speak. Your new orders are being transmitted now." The computer beeped softly, indicating the arrival of encrypted data. "Understood," Eloan said. "And Admiral Blackwood will face a closed military tribunal. His cooperation may mitigate his sentence, but his career is over." Chen's expression hardened, as are those of several others who authorize similar operations. The Joint Chiefs have been instructed to cooperate fully with the investigation. There will be resistance. Undoubtedly, that's why we need operators like you leading the task force, people who understand what was sacrificed. Chen paused, studying Eloan's face. "The President specifically requested you for this, said it was time for the ghosts to step into the light. Not all ghosts want to be seen, Madam Secretary. Perhaps, but all deserve to be acknowledged." Chen glanced at something off-screen. "I have to brief the President again in 10 minutes. Commander Hayes has your full operational package. Good hunting, Spectre." The screen went dark, leaving the 3 of them in momentary silence. Hayes opened a secure drawer in his desk and removed a sealed file with the highest classification markings. "Your new orders, Commander. Effective immediately, you're detached from your current assignment and reassigned to Joint Special Operations Command, Task Force Clean Slate." Eloan accepted the file, but didn't open it. "And the Vigilance? Will continue her deployment under my command until a replacement for Admiral Blackwood can be assigned." Hayes extended his hand. "It's been an honor having you aboard, Commander, even if most of us didn't know who you really were." She accepted the handshake, noting the genuine respect in his eyes. "The crew performed admirably under difficult circumstances. They'll have questions. Rumors are already spreading. Let them spread. Sometimes legends serve a purpose." Hayes nodded, understanding the value of operational mythology in their world. "There's a transport waiting to take you to the rendezvous point. Chief Warwick will escort you." As they made their way through the carrier's passages toward the flight deck, Eloan sensed a shift in the atmosphere around her. The same operators who had once smirked at Blackwood's mockery now moved aside respectfully. Not fear, something deeper. Recognition of what she represented. The shadows where their country sent its best to do what could never be acknowledged. The night air on the flight deck cut through her uniform, carrying the scent of jet fuel and salt. A helicopter waited, rotors already spinning, its pilot completing pre-flight checks. Warwick paused at the edge of the marked safety zone, the rotor wash whipping his uniform. "Commander," he said, raising his voice to be heard over the engine noise, "there's something you should know." She turned to him, waiting. "That extraction message you received, it didn't come through official channels." "I'm aware of that, Chief. It came from someone inside Naval Intelligence, someone who knew exactly when the counterintelligence team was boarding." His eyes met hers directly. "Someone trying to get you off the ship before you could expose. Blackwood, that had occurred to me. Which means Blackwood has protection at the highest levels." Eloan nodded, having already calculated the implications. "It also means someone betrayed the operation to warn him I was coming. And that someone will now know you've survived and succeeded. Let them know." For the first time, a cold smile touched her lips. "It'll make the hunt more interesting." Warwick shook his head slightly. "You've been fighting their wars for 12 years, Commander. Maybe it's time to let someone else carry that weight. These aren't their wars, Chief. They're ours. The ones we fight in the spaces between official conflicts. She glanced toward the helicopter. The difference is, now we're fighting in the open. He followed her gaze to the helicopter, where two figures in unmarked tactical gear waited. Your new team? Part of it. She reached into her pocket and removed the stone with the white line that had sat on her desk, her one personal item. She held it out to Warwick. This was from the pass. I've carried it since that day. He accepted it cautiously, feeling its smooth weight. Why give it to me? Because ghosts shouldn't carry anchors, and because I want someone to remember the mission that started the count. Warwick closed his hand around the stone, understanding the significance of what she was entrusting to him. What happens when you find them all? The ones who betrayed operators like you? I don't know, Chief. I've never planned that far ahead. She turned toward the helicopter, but Warwick's voice stopped her one last time. The count, Commander, 467. Were they all necessary? Elowen paused, the question settling on her like the weight she had carried for 12 years. Every one of them thought they were protecting something worth dying for. I made sure to find out what that was before I took it from them. With that, she strode toward the waiting helicopter, the rotor wash pressing her uniform against her body, revealing for a moment the outline of scars and muscle beneath, the physical record of what it cost to become a ghost. Inside the helicopter, the two operators nodded in greeting. No names were exchanged, those would come later if they survived long enough to matter. One handed her a tactical vest and communications gear, which she donned with practiced efficiency. The other passed her a tablet displaying a map with multiple locations marked in red. Priority targets, the operator explained, voice neutral, despite the extraordinary nature of their mission. Officers who utilized Umbra assets and then buried the operations. Elowen studied the map, recognizing several names. Each represented missions like Khyber Pass, moments where operators had been sacrificed for convenience or careers. How many total? 37 identified so far, more being uncovered as we speak. The helicopter lifted off, banking sharply away from the carrier. Through the open door, Elowen watched the vigilance recede into the darkness, its lights forming a constellation against the black ocean. For 12 years, she had operated in the spaces between official missions, moving like a ghost through conflicts that would never appear in history books. Now she was hunting the architects of those shadows, bringing them into the light they had so carefully avoided. The tablet beeped with an incoming message. A new name had been added to the target list, one that made Elowen's jaw tighten imperceptibly. General Victor Hargrove, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The operator who had given her the tablet watched her reaction carefully. Problem, Commander? No, she replied, her voice neutral. Just unexpected connections. Hargrove was added 10 minutes ago. Intelligence indicates he personally authorized 7 Umbra operations, including yours. 7 operations. 7 ghosts like her, created and then abandoned when convenient. The count expanded in her mind, not just her 467, but the accumulated weight of all the others who had been sent into the shadows and left there. The helicopter banked again, heading toward a distant ship, visible only as running lights on the horizon. Their first rendezvous point, where the rest of Task Force Clean Slate waited. The hunt was just beginning. Commander, the pilot called back. We've got company. 2 aircraft approaching from the west, military signatures, but no identification transponders. Elowen moved to the cockpit, studying the radar display. The aircraft were moving fast on an intercept course. Not Navy. Their flight patterns suggested Air Force Special Operations. Someone with enough authority to scramble military assets off the books. Evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Maintain communications blackout. We're still 40 minutes from the rendezvous, the pilot noted. They'll catch us before we reach the ship. Then we changed the plan. She returned to the cabin, securing her harness before addressing the 2 operators. It seems General Hargrove doesn't appreciate being added to our list. They exchanged glances, reading the situation instantly. Water insertion? Elowen nodded. Plot a course to these coordinates. She entered numbers from memory into the tactical system. It's a submarine we used for exfiltration during Operation Sickle Moon. That's not in our contingency protocols, one operator noted, already preparing the equipment for a night water drop. Official contingencies are compromised, Elowen replied. From now on, we operate on protocols known only to Umbra survivors. Understanding dawned in their eyes. This wasn't just a mission to expose those who had betrayed operators. It was being led by one of the betrayed who had spent years planning for this moment. The official task force was just the visible layer of a much deeper operation. The pursuing aircraft drew closer, their signatures now clearly visible on the tactical display. High-performance interceptors, armed and closing fast. 2 minutes to optimal drop position, the pilot announced, descending to 50 feet above the churning ocean. They're locking weapon systems. Elowen secured her final equipment check, face illuminated by the red cabin lights. In her expression, there was no fear, only the cold calculation of someone who had survived impossible odds before. Ready for water insertion in 60 seconds. As the cabin door slid open, revealing the dark ocean below, one of the operators leaned close to be heard over the roaring wind. "Commander, if this goes wrong, what's the contingency?" Elowen checked her oxygen supply one final time. "Find the others. There are 12 Umbra survivors still alive. They know what to do if I don't make the rendezvous." The operator's eyes widened slightly. "You've been planning this for years. Since the moment they left me in that pass." She moved to the door, poised at the threshold between the helicopter and the vast darkness below. 467 wasn't just a count, it was preparation. With that, she stepped into the void, disappearing into the black water as missile lock warnings blared through the helicopter's systems. Have you ever wondered about the invisible warriors who carry out the most dangerous missions, only to have others take credit for their sacrifices? What do we owe to those who fight in shadows so deep that even their victories must remain unacknowledged? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to follow Elowen's hunt for justice in the conclusion of this story. The impact with the ocean surface came at precisely the angle Elowen had calculated, steep enough to minimize the force, shallow enough to prevent injury. Cold water enveloped her as she plunged beneath the surface, her specialized gear automatically adjusting to the pressure. Above, the night sky flashed with light as missiles streaked toward the helicopter. She watched from beneath the waves as the pilot executed a desperate evasive maneuver, deploying countermeasures that bloomed like underwater fireworks from her perspective. The missiles detonated harmlessly in the helicopter's wake, the explosion rippling through the water around her. 20 feet down, Elowen activated her underwater propulsion device, a compact unit that pulled her smoothly through the darkness. Her night vision system rendered the ocean in shades of green, revealing the vast emptiness surrounding her. She'd made hundreds of water insertions during her career, but this one carried different stakes. This wasn't an operation for faceless superiors. This was personal. The coordinates she'd memorized from Operation Sickle Moon led her 3 miles southeast, where the ocean floor suddenly dropped into a deep channel. There, hovering in the darkness like a shadow within shadow, waited a submarine, an Ohio-class vessel officially listed as being in port for maintenance on the other side of the world. A lockout chamber opened in the submarine's hull as she approached. The interior illuminated with red light as she swam inside, the chamber ceiling behind her. Water drained with clinical efficiency, leaving her standing in her dripping gear as the inner hatch unsealed. A single figure waited on the other side, a woman in her 50s, silver-streaked hair cut in a practical style, wearing the uniform of a naval captain without insignia. Only her eyes revealed familiarity as she studied Elowen. "You're 2 hours early, Commander," she said mildly, "and missing your extraction team." The timeline accelerated, Captain Vega. Elowen removed her breathing apparatus. Hargrove's people moved faster than anticipated. Vega's expression tightened at the name. So they know. They know something, enough to scramble intercept aircraft without proper authorization. The captain nodded once, processing this development. "Your team? Following secondary protocols. They'll meet us at Waypoint Echo if they make it. If they don't?" Elowen met the captain's gaze directly. "Then, we continue without them. The mission parameters haven't changed." Vega studied her for a moment longer, then turned toward the submarine's interior. "Get changed. The others are waiting in the command center." "Others?" Elowen hadn't expected additional personnel. A ghost of a smile touched Vega's lips. "You're not the only shadow they tried to erase, Commander." The submarine's command center had been converted from its original purpose, weapons control stations repurposed for intelligence operations. As Elowen entered, now dressed in dry, tactical gear, she found herself facing 5 individuals arranged around a central holographic display. She recognized each face instantly, despite never having met them in person. Task Force Umbra operators, all presumed dead or permanently reassigned to deep cover operations. Ghosts like her, who had served in the spaces between official missions. Commander Marcus Chen, reported killed in Yemen 7 years ago. Lieutenant Adira Nazari, listed as missing in action during an operation in Kazakhstan. Chief Rafael Ortega, officially retired after a training accident left him disabled, an accident that never occurred. Lieutenant Commander James Blackfeather, whose helicopter supposedly crashed in the Hindu Kush. And finally, Captain Catherine Vega herself, the original architect of Task Force Umbra, who had allegedly died of a heart attack 3 years earlier. Spectres, Vega said simply, using their shared operational designation. All of you were selected because you survived what was meant to kill you, because you completed missions others deemed impossible, and because each of you was betrayed by the same command structure. The holographic display between them showed a complex network of connections, names, operations, dates. At the center, General Victor Hargrove, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Operation Clean Slate is official. Policy as of 2300 hours, Vega continued, authorized by the president himself after evidence of systematic abuses came to light. What is not official, what will never appear in any record, is our parallel operation. Elowen studied the display, seeing her own operational history woven into the larger pattern. Stalking horse, she said, understanding immediately. The official investigation is cover for something else. Precisely? Vega expanded a section of the display. While JSOC conducts its official review, we'll be targeting the black sites, archives, and personnel that would otherwise be sanitized before investigators arrive. How deep does it go? Blackfeather asked, his voice carrying the distinctive accent of the Lakota Nation. All the way to the top, Vega replied. Hargrove created a parallel command structure within JSOC, operations authorized only by him and a select group, deniable at every level. Task Force Umbra was just one component. The display shifted again, revealing a timeline of operations spanning 15 years. Hundreds of missions conducted by operators who officially didn't exist, targeting objectives that would never appear in any briefing. 467, Chen said, looking at Elowen. That's why you kept count. I kept nothing, she corrected him. They did. Every elimination quantified, evaluated, documented, asset efficiency metrics. What they didn't document, Vega interjected, were the operators who carried out those missions, or what happened to them afterward. The hologram transformed again, displaying personnel files, dozens of them, each marked with a simple designation. Terminated. 34 operators, Vega said, her voice hardening, all eliminated after their missions were complete, not by enemy action, by our own command structure. The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. They weren't just betrayed operators, they were survivors of a systematic purge. Why keep us alive? Nazari asked, her fingers unconsciously tracing a scar along her jawline. Because they couldn't find us, Vega answered simply. Each of you went off-grid after your final mission. Each of you recognized the threat and disappeared, and each of you has spent years gathering evidence, just as I have. Why now? Ortega asked, leaning forward on prosthetic legs that had replaced those lost during his training accident. Vega looked to Elowen. Because the Admiral made a mistake. He recognized one of his ghosts. The final piece clicked into place in Elowen's mind. You engineered my assignment to the Vigilance. I identified the weak link in Hargrove's chain, Vega corrected. Blackwood was the most vulnerable, the most likely to break under pressure. Your history with him made you the perfect catalyst. And the extraction order I received? Not from us, Chen interjected. That came directly from Hargrove's people. They were monitoring Blackwood, realized what was happening, and tried to pull you out before you could expose him. Elowen absorbed this new information, recalibrating her understanding of recent events. So, now we're in a race. The official investigation versus Hargrove's cleanup operation. With one advantage, Vega said, manipulating the display again. We know where the bodies are buried, literally. The hologram now showed a remote mountain facility, a compound built into the side of a peak in the Hindu Kush, not far from where the Khyber Pass operation had occurred 12 years earlier. Site Erebus, Vega explained. Hargrove's Black Archive. Every operation, every elimination, every operator file, all stored in a facility officially listed as an abandoned listening post. Officially abandoned, perhaps, Blackfeather noted, but I'm guessing well defended in reality. 2 platoons of private military contractors with no official affiliation, automated defense systems, biometric access limited to 7 individuals, including Hargrove himself. Impossible to breach, Nazari said, studying the facility's schematics. Nearly impossible, Vega corrected, unless you happen to have the access credentials of one of those 7 individuals. All eyes turned to the captain. Before my heart attack, I was the 8th person with access. When they removed me from the program, they deleted my credentials, but not the backdoor I created in the system. For the first time since the meeting began, Elowen felt something close to hope, not just for justice, but for redemption. For all of them. What's the timeline? She asked. 12 hours, Vega replied. That's how long before Hargrove realizes the submarine is missing and connects the dots. We infiltrate at dawn, local time, extract the complete archives, transmit to secure servers, then make sure the world sees exactly what's been done in the name of national security. The 5 operators exchange glances, each carrying the weight of their own betrayals, their own impossible missions, their own survival against all odds. One last operation, Chen said quietly. One last mission, Vega agreed. But this time, we're not ghosts. This time, we leave a record. The Ohio-class submarine cut through the darkness of the Arabian Sea, its classified propulsion system, allowing speeds that would have seemed impossible for a vessel its size. On the bridge, Captain Vega coordinated with her skeleton crew, all former Umbra support personnel who had followed her off the books after her death. In the submarine's briefing room, Elowen and the other operators prepared their equipment with the methodical precision of those who had survived by leaving nothing to chance. Each movement was economical, each piece of gear selected with specific purpose. Your count, Blackfeather said as he checked his communications gear beside her. 467. Does it haunt you? Elowen continued her preparations without pausing. They weren't ghosts to me. Each one had a name, a reason, a cause they believed justified their actions. I made sure of that. You identified them all, before? Whenever possible. I wanted to know who I was removing from the world. She secured a specialized infiltration harness. It seemed important that someone remembered them as people, not just targets. Blackfeather nodded, understanding in a way only another operator could. And the ones who sent you? Who saw you as just a weapon? They're just numbers to me now. 37 targets, 7 authorization codes, 1 central facility. And after? When it's done? Elowen paused, the question settling on her shoulders like a physical weight. For 12 years, she had existed as Spectre, moving through shadows, completing impossible missions, surviving what was meant to kill her. The concept of after had never seemed relevant. I don't know, she admitted. I've never planned that far ahead. None of us have, Chen said, joining them. That's why they chose us. People who live only for the mission are easier to discard when it's complete. The submarine's intercom activated with Captain Vega's voice. Approaching insertion point, all operators to deployment. The Hindu Kush Mountains rose like jagged teeth against the pale dawn sky, their slopes still shrouded in shadow as the first light touched their peaks. Site Erebus was nestled in a narrow valley, its entrance disguised as an abandoned Soviet-era facility, its true purpose hidden beneath layers of cover stories and classified designations. 6 figures moved through the pre-dawn darkness, their thermal signatures masked by specialized gear, their approach taking advantage of blind spots in the facility's sensor grid. Captain Vega led, her movements belying her age, her knowledge of the facility's defenses guiding their path. Perimeter sensors in 30 seconds, she murmured into her communications unit. Ortega? Ready, came the reply from half a mile away, where the former chief had positioned himself with his electronic countermeasure equipment. Deploying in 3, 2, 1. A pulse of focused electromagnetic energy temporarily blinded the facility's external sensors, creating a 30-second window in which the team crossed the final approach to the main entrance, a reinforced door set into the mountainside, disguised as maintenance access to long-abandoned equipment. Vega placed her palm against a concealed scanner. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then a soft click, followed by the sound of heavy bolts retracting. "Access granted," an automated system announced. "Welcome back, Captain Vega." "They never completely purged me from the system," she explained as they entered a narrow corridor. Too many redundancies they didn't fully understand. The corridor led deeper into the mountain, transitioning from rough-hewn rock to polished concrete, and finally to the sterile environment of a modern data facility. Security checkpoints appeared. Unmanned, the system's recognition of Vega's credentials automatically clearing their path. "This is wrong," Nazari whispered, her training making her instinctively suspicious of unopposed entry. "Where's the security team?" "Biometric system recognized authorized personnel," Vega replied. "Standard protocol is to remain at standby stations unless alerted." "Or they're waiting for us deeper in," Chen suggested. "Either way, we maintain the timeline. Central Archive is 2 levels down." They descended through the facility, passing empty workstations and darkened offices. The place felt like a mausoleum, a repository of secrets kept by the dead, guarded by shadows. The Central Archive occupied the heart of the mountain, a vast chamber filled with server banks, each humming with the accumulated data of decades of clandestine operations. At its center stood a sealed vault, its door a foot thick, designed to survive even if the mountain above it collapsed. "The physical archives," Vega explained, "documents too sensitive to digitize, evidence that could never be allowed to see daylight." "Including our files," Alawan added, understanding immediately. "The real records of Task Force Umbra." "Precisely." Vega approached the vault's control panel. "This will take several minutes to access. Establish perimeter security." As the others moved into defensive positions, Alawan studied the surrounding server banks. Each represented thousands of operations, countless lives affected by decisions made in secure rooms thousands of miles away. Somewhere in this digital labyrinth was the record of every mission she had ever undertaken, every target she had ever eliminated, every moment that had transformed her from a naval officer into a ghost. "Captain!" Chen's voice came urgently through the comm system. "We've got incoming. Multiple heat signatures approaching from the south entrance." "Security team?" "Negative. These are military-grade signatures. Special operations." Vega's hands continued working at the vault controls, her expression unchanged. "Hargrove's insurance policy. He must have been alerted the moment my credentials were used." "Timeline?" Alawan asked. 5 minutes to access the vault, another 3 to secure the contents." "That's too long," Chen responded. "They'll be on us in 3 minutes maximum." Alawan made her decision instantly, the tactical calculus second nature after years of impossible missions. "Nazari, Chen, establish blocking positions at the south access corridor. Blackfeather, secure our exit route. I'll cover the captain." They moved without question, each understanding their role in the rapidly evolving situation. As they disappeared into the facility's corridors, Alawan positioned herself with clear sightlines to all potential approaches to the archive. "They're coming for the same thing we are," she said to Vega, who continued working at the vault controls. "The evidence." "Yes." The captain's fingers moved with practice. Precision across the interface. "Hargrove can't afford for any of this to become public. Too many powerful people implicated. Too many secrets exposed." In the distance, the first sounds of engagement echoed through the facility. The muffled reports of suppressed weapons, the dull thud of breaching charges. Chen and Nazari making contact with the approaching force. 2 minutes, Vega announced as the vault mechanism began its opening sequence. Alawan's comm unit crackled with Nazari's voice. "Heavy resistance. At least 12 operators, special forces equipment. We're falling back to secondary positions." "Acknowledged. Hold as long as you can." The vault door began to swing open, revealing rows of physical storage, document boxes, secure containers, and at the center, a specialized case marked with the highest classification designations. "There," Vega said, moving toward it, "the Umbra files." As she reached for the case, a new sound cut through the facility. the high-pitched whine of a specialized breaching tool coming from directly above them. They were cutting through from another level. They knew we were coming, Elowen realized. This was a trap. No, Vega corrected, securing the case. This was a contingency, one of many Hargrove would have prepared. The ceiling above them began to glow red as the breaching tool cut through the reinforced concrete. Particles drifted down like deadly snow. We need to move, now. They had just cleared the vault when the ceiling section collapsed, allowing armored figures to fast rope into the archive chamber. Elowen pushed Vega ahead, turning to lay down covering fire that would slow their pursuers without causing casualties. These weren't their enemies, just soldiers following orders, unaware of the larger game. "Black Feather," she called into her comm. "Status on our exit?" "Compromised," came the reply, punctuated by the sound of gunfire. "They've got the main shaft blocked, working on an alternative." "Ortega? I can get a helicopter to the North Ridge, but you'll have to find your own way there. 15 minutes maximum." Vega pulled Elowen into a side corridor as bullets impacted the wall where they had been standing. "There's a maintenance shaft that connects to an old ventilation system. It emerges half a kilometer north of the facility." "Lead the way." They moved deeper into the facility's labyrinthine interior, the sounds of pursuit growing more distant as they navigated passages not shown on standard schematics. Vega's intimate knowledge of the facility guiding them through blind corners and hidden access points. "Chen, Nazari, Black Feather," Elowen called through the comm. "Fall back to extraction point Baker. Repeat, extract to Baker." Static answered her. "Comms are being jammed," Vega said grimly. "They're on their own now." The maintenance shaft was little more than a crawl space, barely large enough for them to move through on hands and knees. Decades of dust covered every surface, their passage stirring it into clouds that threatened to choke them despite their filtered masks. 500 meters to the exit," Vega said, her voice strained from the exertion. "The ventilation system widens after the next junction." As they reached the junction, a sound from behind them froze them both, the metallic scrape of someone else entering the shaft. Their pursuers had found their escape route. "Keep moving," Elowen urged. "I'll delay them." "There's no time for heroics, Commander." "Not heroics, mathematics. The evidence needs to get out. You need to get out with it." Vega studied her face in the dim emergency lighting, recognizing the calm calculation of an operator who had made such decisions countless times before. "We'll rendezvous at the extraction point. Go." As Vega continued forward with the case containing the Umbra files, Elowen positioned herself at the junction, using the narrow confines to create a choke point that would force their pursuers into a vulnerable position. The first figure appeared as a shadow against the dim light of the shaft, moving with the careful precision of trained personnel. Elowen waited until they committed to the final approach before acting, a swift, non-lethal strike that incapacitated without killing. No different than the countless operations she had conducted over 12 years, except this time she was targeting her own countrymen. A second figure appeared, then a third, each neutralized with clinical efficiency, left unconscious but unharmed in the narrow confines of the shaft. But the fourth was more cautious, holding back just beyond her reach. "Spectre," a voice called from the darkness, a familiar voice that made Elowen's blood go cold. "Stand down." General Victor Hargrove emerged into the dim light, his uniform exchanged for tactical gear, his face lined with the strain of recent events. "You've caused quite a disruption to my organization," he continued, maintaining a safe distance. "Impressive work, as always." "Your organization," Elowen replied, her voice neutral despite the rage building inside her. "Not the country's, not the services, yours. A necessary distinction in our line of work. Some operations require complete deniability. Some decisions can never see daylight. Like eliminating your own operators after they've served their purpose." A flicker of something, not quite regret, not quite pride, crossed his face. "Operational security. The same reason you exist as a ghost. The same reason your count was allowed to grow so high." 467, she said, the number carrying new weight in his presence. "Plus, 34 operators eliminated after completing their missions. An unfortunate necessity. Was I to be 35? Hargrove didn't answer immediately, his silence more damning than any confession. "The Khyber Pass operation," he finally said. "You were supposed to die there. Blackwood was ordered to leave you behind permanently, not just for the extraction. Your survival was unexpected. As was my continued effectiveness afterward. Yes, you became too valuable to eliminate immediately. A calculation error on my part." Elowen heard what he wasn't saying, that her elimination had merely been postponed, not cancelled, that each subsequent mission had been intended to be her last. "The others," she said, "the ones who escaped you, they were similar miscalculations?" Each represented a unique failure in the system, lessons learned and applied to subsequent operations. He gestured to the shaft behind him. "But now, it's time to close those loops. Come in voluntarily, and I can ensure the others survive. Resist, and everyone associated with this operation will be eliminated, including the submarine crew." For 12 years, Elowen had followed orders without question, had eliminated targets based on information provided by superiors, had trusted the system she served, even as it used her as an expendable tool. The weight of 467 eliminations had been bearable because she believed in the necessity behind each one. Now that certainty was gone, replaced by the knowledge that she had been wielded by people who saw her as nothing more than a weapon to be discarded when convenient. "Your count is 467, Hargrove continued. "An impressive record of service, one that would be recognized appropriately once this situation is contained." "My count," she corrected him, "is 501. 34 operators eliminated without cause or justice, and you, General, making 501. Hargrove's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Elowen was already in motion, a blur of movement in the confined space, executing maneuvers specifically designed for close-quarters combat. Not to kill, but to incapacitate, not out of mercy, but out of justice. The general collapsed unconscious, joining his men in the narrow shaft. Elowen secured him with restraints, then took something from his tactical vest, an authentication key required for the highest level of classified communications. The path to the surface was clear now, the ventilation shaft widening as Vega had promised. Elowen emerged into the crisp mountain air just as dawn fully illuminated the peaks around her. In the distance, she could see the contrails of approaching aircraft, the beginning of the official Operation Clean Slate investigation, right on schedule. On a ridge half a kilometer away, a helicopter waited, its rotors already spinning. Through her tactical binoculars, Elowen could see Captain Vega at the open door, the case containing the Umbra files secured beside her, no sign of the others yet. Her comm unit crackled back to life as she cleared the jamming range of the facility. "Commander," Ortega's voice came through, "Blackfeather and Chen are aboard. Nazari is approaching from the east slope. ETA 2 minutes. What's your status?" "Package secured," she replied. +1. Additional asset. Hargrove. Unconscious but intact. Ready for delivery to the official investigation team. A momentary silence then. "Understood. We'll hold for your arrival." Elowen began moving toward the ridge, Hargrove's authentication key secure in her gear. With it, they could access every system he had used to orchestrate his shadow operations, exposing not just Task Force Umbra, but the entire parallel structure he had created. The morning sun illuminated the mountains around her, turning the snow-capped peaks to gold. After 12 years in shadow, the light felt strange, exposing, yet somehow liberating. For the first time since the Khyber Pass operation, since the moment her count began, Elowen allowed herself to consider what might come after. Not as Spectre, the ghost who moved through shadows eliminating targets. Not as a weapon to be wielded by others and then discarded, but as Lieutenant Commander Elowen Reeve, bringing into the light what had festered too long in darkness. The helicopter waited on the ridge, her team, no longer ghosts but comrades, securing their hard-won evidence. The official investigation aircraft drew closer, their arrival marking the beginning of a reckoning long overdue. Elowen reached the crest of the ridge just as Nazari emerged from the eastern approach, both of them converging on the waiting helicopter. Behind them, the entrance to Site Erebus was now visible in the morning light, no longer a shadow within shadow, but exposed for what it was. As she boarded the helicopter, Captain Vega handed her a satellite phone. "Secure channel to SecNav and the President. They're waiting for confirmation." Elowen took the phone, feeling the weight of transition from deniable asset to official witness. "This is Lieutenant Commander Reeve. Operation Stalking Horse complete. Primary objective secured, including General Hargrove. Recommend immediate implementation of clean slate protocols at all identified sites. The voice that responded carried the unmistakable authority of the Oval Office. Understood, Commander. Well done. Transport is being arranged to bring you and your team directly to Washington. It's time the country knew what was done in its name and who really kept them safe. As the helicopter lifted off, banking away from the facility where so many secrets had been buried, Elowen looked down at the unconscious form of General Hargrove. Not a target eliminated, but a conspirator exposed. Not another count added, but a system dismantled. The stone from Khyber Pass was gone now, given to Warwick aboard the Vigilance. Her one anchor to the past, to the moment when she became Spectre, released so she could move forward unburdened. 467. A number that had defined her existence for 12 years. Each one a person, each one a decision, each one a weight carried in silence. Now that weight would be shared, distributed among those who had given the orders, who had designed the system, who had treated operators as expendable tools rather than human beings serving their country at the highest cost. The helicopter banked again, heading toward the rendezvous with the submarine that would take them to their official extraction point. Below, the official investigation teams began landing at Site Erebus, their arrival marking the transition from shadow operation to public accounting. What now? Nazari asked from across the cabin, her question encompassing all the uncertainty that came with emerging from the shadows. Elowen looked at each of them, Chen, Blackfeather, Ortega, Vega, Nazari, no longer ghosts but survivors, no longer weapons but witnesses. Now, we bring it all into the light, she said. Every operation, every decision, every name. And after? Blackfeather asked, echoing his question from the submarine. For the first time in 12 years, Elowen allowed herself to consider the possibility of after. Not as a theoretical concept, but as a tangible future. After, she said, we count different things. The helicopter continued westward, leaving behind the mountain facility and all it represented. In her mind, Elowen could already see the proceedings that would follow. Congressional hearings, military tribunals, public reckonings. The country confronting what had been done in the shadows of its wars. But beyond that lay something she had never permitted herself to imagine. A life not defined by elimination counts or operational parameters. A future where the skills that had kept her alive might serve different purposes. Where the precision and focus that made her lethal could be channeled toward healing what had been broken. In herself, in her comrades, in the system they had served. The sun climbed higher, illuminating the vast landscape below. No longer a battlefield to navigate, but a world to rejoin. No longer shadows to move through, but open ground to traverse. 467 had been her count in darkness. In the light, she would count differently. Have you ever witnessed someone find redemption by exposing a difficult truth? How did bringing secrets into the light change them, and those around them? Share your reflections in the comments, and subscribe to explore more stories about the hidden heroes whose sacrifices often go unrecognized until someone brave enough stands up and says, "This is who I really am."